All right. A couple of weeks ago, if you remember, we present use case scenario where we wanted to check whether a given student will get the blue tick by the end of the bootcamp. Yeah? So if you remember, what we did was pretty much to create a bunch of tests that depending on a couple of scenarios. So first of all, we wanted to check how many conflicts tasks the user completed. Yeah? So according to this simplified scenario, to get the blue tick, you needed two things. First of all, to complete at least 24 tasks on conflicts. Then there was a second requirement about getting a score of 40 plus on JavaScript expert. Yeah? This is an example. Essentially, ignoring the semantics, our algorithm will receive an object with two properties, two numbers, yeah? Conflicts, and then the JavaScript score. Yeah? This is a simplification of how it works in reality. Yeah? But I hope that's okay regarding this exercise. And if you remember, we did something like that. We wrote a bunch of tests. So for instance, our am I certified function returns false if conflicts task is not 24. Yeah? So if the student is on task number 23, he or she doesn't get the blue tick. Another use case scenario was, regardless of conflicts, if the JavaScript score is above at least 40, it's not 40, sorry, doesn't get the blue tick neither. And then finally, the last use case scenario is if both conditions are satisfied, if conflict is at least 24 and JavaScript score is at least 40, then the user gets the blue tick. Yeah. So that's pretty much the test we did. If you remember, we first of all wrote the test, we broke the functionality, then we fixed the functionality, and then we moved to the next thing. That's pretty much what we did. Even though that looks good to me as a starting point, there are some caveats, there are some problems here. So, for instance, just looking at the tests on the left-hand side, are all the use case scenarios covered? Imagine that you have no idea about coding. You're a business person. And I'm telling you that with these three use case scenarios, all the possibilities are covered. What do you think? Let me rephrase the question. What happened? So for instance,
maybe if the conflicts 23 will not be a number, and it could be...
Yeah, no, okay, fair enough. I'm not talking about weird data, if instead of a number you receive a string. No, I'm talking as a business, not as a developer. So as a business, so here is a returns false. Oh, this one is maybe easier to learn. So returns false if conflict task is less than 24. But what happened? Well, yeah, but on top of that, what happened if, for instance, user has completed 23 tasks on conflicts, however, his or her JavaScript score is 99. So you get my point. We are not covering that use case scenario. We are not covering. If I'm business, I have no idea how our system will react to that scenario. Yeah? In other words, how many conditions do we have? How many variables our function deals with? Say it again, Kaini? 4. Why 4? 1? Why 1? You can keep giving numbers. I will keep asking the same question. So how many variables our function deals with? 2. 2, that's correct. You got conflicts, and the JavaScript score. These are the two variables. So if we got two variables, and they can individually, these expressions can individually be truthy or falsy, yeah? How many use case scenarios do we have? 4, that's correct. That's correct. Because essentially, we need to evaluate all the use case scenarios, true and true, yeah? If this is okay and that is okay. Also, false and true. True and false. And what else? Correct, false and false. You see, we need to cover every possible angle, because otherwise, for instance, at the moment, we are not covering that scenario at all. Can you tell me which test covers that use case scenario? No, we're not covering that. Because, for instance, false, the second one, that's the closest one, yeah? Because in here, student.score is less than 40, so that criteria is falsy. But we are doing nothing with the conflicts criteria. So we definitely need to cover every single possibility. Because if there is a bug, if there is an issue in this use case scenario, it means that our algorithm returns true in that use case scenario. So if you got good conflicts score, but your JavaScript challenge score is poor, it means that our algorithm says, yes, you are certified. Our tests won't spot that use case scenario. They won't do that, because we are never checking what happened if conflicts is okay, but the JavaScript score is not okay. So how you see the point? We need to cover every single possibility. Yeah? We've got two variables, two conditions, then we need 4 different tests. What happens if we will have 3 variables? It means that on top of that, conflicts, JavaScript score, we got a third condition, like you have to participate on the team app, yeah, as an example. So how many tests will we need? 8, that's correct, Kanye. At the moment, we got 4. Why 4? Because we got 2, let me find that character, POW 2. However, why 2 POW 2? Because we got 2 conditions, and each condition has 2 possible values, true or false. If we got 3 conditions, the number of tests we should write is 2 POW 3. Why? Because we will have 3 conditions. First of all, conflicts, then the JavaScript score, and then team app collaboration, 3 conditions, and each condition has 2 possibilities, truthy or falsy. Yeah? So 2 POW 3 is the same as 3 times 2, yeah? Of multiplying number 2 3 times. So that's 8. In this particular case, 2 POW 2 is 2 multiplied by 2, which is 4. Okay? So we definitely need to cover all the angles. If not, we are ignoring potential issues in some particular use cases. So we need 4 tests. And definitely, we can actually change that. So for instance, returns false if conflict status is less than 24 and JS score on expert is less than 40. So that's the false and false. Yeah? Conflicts 23 and JS score 12, yeah, for instance. So this is false and false. Actually, you can add a comment for now. Let me add a comment. So let me check the tests are passing, by the way. Yes, correct. So this is false and false. I will remove it later on, but just for reference purposes. So now returns false if the JavaScript score is lower than 40. Even if conflicts task is greater or equal than 24. Yeah? So even if conflicts is okay, but the JavaScript score is not okay, so what the scenario is that? False, false, true, false, false, true? True, false, that's correct. The first condition, conflicts, is met. However, the second condition, which is the JavaScript score, is not okay. So false, true, true, false. Let's do, guys, the false and true. So can anybody tell me how the test should look like on the false and true scenario? Returns false if, go back, if conflicts is
less than 24.
What else? Even if or and
Even if
JavaScript score is greater or equal than 40. Yeah? So if conflict is 23, it doesn't matter if you got the perfect score on JavaScript. Yeah? You go and get the blue tick. And finally, what the scenario is this one? True and true, correct. So now we've covered every single possibility from a business point of view. Of course, as I think Camila suggested, what happens if instead of a number we receive a string? What happens if we receive undefined? So yeah, I agree on that. If we want to go very deep on that, we may be talking about 200 scenarios. But at least from a business point of view, they don't understand numbers, strings. They understand use cases scenarios. Yeah. So from a business point of view, we got two possibilities. So once you got that, I hope you agree with me that if we had a third condition, of course we can handle that. True, 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 false, false, true, false. But at some point that may be a bit exhausting, yeah? Writing the same thing again, again, and again, and again, and again. So let me present you a very simplistic yet powerful technique to simplify the process of scaling your test. So this pattern is called test rolling. So test rolling means if all your tests are very similar and the only thing that changes is the data and the expected outcome, I can create an array of tests. Yeah. An array of tests, actually I'm going to comment everything for now. So I will rewrite these 4 use cases scenarios just by creating an array. As part of the array, I will first of all specify the title and then the conditions. Conflicts is 23, JavaScript score is 12, and then what's the expected? True or false? False, correct. So I will actually create all the possible scenarios. The first one, second, third, and fourth. You see, still 4 scenarios, but rather than creating 4 tests like that, I'm creating an array with 4 objects. So now, of course, let's just copy and paste the titles. I got the first, now I got the second. Let me remove it. Let's go through the third one. Third one, here it is. And finally, the fourth one. This is the fourth one. Yep, 4 use cases here. And then let's change the numbers. So returns false if JavaScript expert is less than 40. So that's here. even if conflicts is greater than 24. So even if conflicts, you are on test number 80. Returns false if the conflicts is less than 24, that's correct. Even if JavaScript score is greater than 40, greater or equal. Let's do it. And finally, returns true if all these tasks, all these conditions are met. And that should be true. Yep. So I'm creating an array of use case scenarios. And then what? Well, because that's an array, I can loop. Yeah, can I do for each? Do you remember for each? And now I got on each scenario, then I can just access the data I want. Can anybody tell me what do I have? This has nothing to do with testing. This is just, close that. This is just JavaScript. So in JavaScript, can anybody tell me what do I have to type here? Say it again, Camila? Object.values?
Oh, no, I thought you wanted to access that.
I want to access that value on each case. A scenario is each individual object. Yeah? This is one scenario, this is one scenario. So how do you access the property conflicts out of the scenario? Correct, Kaini. Scenario dot conflicts. And likewise, how do you access the JavaScript score? Correct, Octavian. Yeah. And finally, is that right? What do I have to type here? Scenario dot what? Expected. Correct, guys. So now I got the same result. All these tests, oh, one test is failing. I did something wrong. All right, that's good, guys. So I broke one test by accident. Let's try to debug it. Yeah? Oh, one test is failing. What is that? Oh, wait a minute. You know, when you get something like that, that feels very weird. Yeah? Expected. Why is expecting the whole object? Sometimes the test triggers before you finish typing. You are typing a scenario dot the test triggers. So if you think that the outcome is completely weird, add a silly change, like maybe add a break line, that will force the test to run again. Oh, still failing. So maybe I did something wrong. Your test may contain, oh, that's very weird. Ah. So my test, oh, wait a minute. Yes. That's a different error. But that's a genuine issue. I did something wrong. Your test must contain at least one test. And you may be thinking, my test is here. Can anybody see where the problem is? Wrong? How do you define a test in JavaScript? Correct? Camila, can you just repeat that? No, she can't.
No, sorry, but because you have it in the object, that is, I think it does not have to be outside.
Every single line here is perfect. So you don't have to find any typo here. Well, I hope it's perfect. The problem is somewhere else. How do you define a test in JavaScript? What's the syntax?
You describe.
Describe? No, we got the describe already. Look.
It.
It. Correct. To define a test, we type it. Did I type any it here? No, I forgot that. So it. And now you put the test inside of it. So what do I type here? That's the title of the test. You got it here, guys. Scenario dot what? Correct. Yep. So that's a very elegant way of unrolling the test. And to me, that helps on readability as well, because if I want to read all the use cases scenarios, I can simply focus on the array. It what? So that's the title. these are the variables, and based on these two variables, that's the expected result. Yeah. Obviously, you can type whatever you want here. Instead of expected, you can type result, outcome, returned, whatever. Yeah. This is just an example of a valid syntax. So, will this work? Still failing. Let's see what is wrong. Now it says encounter a declaration exception. What the hell is going on here? Invalid first argument, object. Can you see the... No. That's a bit weird. Actually, let me try again to see if there is a timing issue. Yeah, so once again, the test ran too early. Yeah? So if something doesn't work as expected, just add a silly change, space or break line, whatever, and that will force a new iteration of the test. So all the tests are okay, and you can see this is quite readable, yeah? Because first of all, it presents you the title of your test spec, am I certified? This is what I type here on top. And then on each test, you got the title, and the green tick meaning, yes, the test is okay. So if by accident I break one of the tests, so that test will fail, because if conflict is 39 and JavaScript score is 100, that won't return false. Now it will return true. And then you can see, man, you got 3,000 tests. If you land on a very complex project, they may have thousands of tests. So if that happens, this is pretty useful, pretty convenient, because you should be able to easily identify at least which test is failing. And then of course you can do a bit of debugging why this test is failing. Cool. So one more thing. This is what we call TDD. Yeah, we wrote the tests, then we add the business logic, as we saw a couple of weeks ago. Today we've done a bit of refactoring to improve the quality of the test. However, there is something called BDD, which is a type of TDD. You know what BDD stands for? Behavior-driven development. Yes, that's correct. So BDD is a way of writing TDD tests, in theory, a bit more business-friendly, in theory. I know this sounds very wide, very generic, but the message or the goal we try to achieve is, imagine that we got a new business analyst into our team, and obviously that person doesn't really, in the long term, that person will have a lot of power about the new features and everything, but in the short term, you have much better idea about how the product works because you've been working on that team for maybe 1 year. Yeah? But in the short term, that person needs to catch up, needs to understand how the features work, what is the menu, how can we search, type of users, whatever. Needs to understand how the software works. So what BDD tries to achieve is, all right, you can do two things. You can spend 2 days sitting with the new business analyst, explaining all the features, yeah, all the aspects of the app, or you can invite him or her to check all the tests on the product. So the person should be able to understand the logic associated to your product just by reading the tests. That sounds to me fantastic, but in reality, that's extremely romantic. That never happened. I never been on a project. I tried that a few times. Hey, you are new here. Just spend 2 days trying to understand that. Never happened. Yeah? But anyway, that's the idea. And obviously, even though the idea is very romantic, if you ever work with a business analyst with some technical background, it may work. Again, never happened to me. Yes, but ideally speaking, one day it may work. Yeah. So obviously, it didn't work because that's too complicated for business. However, we can try to simplify that a bit. Let me present you the AAA syntax or AAA approach. So we can restructure that. I mean, that line, guys, is hard to read. Yeah, many things are going on here. So let me rewrite that. So when you write the test, you can add 3 blocks. Could be 2, could be 4, but generally speaking are 4. Arrays to set up your test. You may have heard, instead of arrays, about given, like given something, then act, you take an action. We also refer to that as when, trigger an action, and finally assert. Also we refer to that as then. What do you expect? So given a user has completed conflicts 25 tasks and JavaScript score blah blah, then, when we check whether that person got the blue tick or not, then we tell him or her, yes, you got the blue tick. Yeah? That's the strategy towards making our test a bit more readable. So given. All right. So what is the condition? The condition is, generally speaking, your data model. Here's where you present the details of your algorithm. So can I, guys, destructure a scenario? Can I create 2 variables with conflicts and the JavaScript score? How do we do that? Curly brace. What else? Conflicts. What else? Yeah, that's correct. Given I want to play with 2 variables, yeah. When, so what's the action? The action is I want to call that function. Yeah. Given I got these details, check if that person is certified. And obviously now we can get rid of that. Yeah. So because now conflicts is in a variable and JavaScript score is in another variable. Can anybody tell me how can we simplify that JavaScript object? Correct. Remember, we can do that. Whenever the key and the value are the same, what's the name of this pattern? Say it again?
Destructure.
Wrong. This is destructuring. That's not destructuring. That's what we call object shorthand. That's a shorthand, because instead of using the long version, that's the long version, we simply do that. Yeah? Object shorthand. So, okay, I want to call the function, but obviously I want to save the result. So let me create a variable result, for instance. Yep. And now, finally, assert. Can anybody tell me what's the assertion here?
It's the result. False.
Result what?
No, true or false result.
I will leave that for reference purposes. How do you assert something writing a test? Expect what?
No, open parenthesis and then inside that.
Expect, which is a function, so we call the function, then what? Result. To be. To be what? True.
To be truthy, something like that. No, not like that. To be truthy.
To be truthy. Like that?
Not inside, not as an argument. I think that's
To be
without a parenthesis. To be truthy.
like that. Does that make sense?
No, it's to be in parentheses for scenario expected.
Look, that's very weird because all the tests are passing, but we are not actually testing anything because that's a method. So we should invoke it. If we invoke it, will that work? What happened? Can anybody tell me why every single test apart from the last one has failed?
Because the last one is the returns the true.
So what Anita is suggesting to the new business analyst, regardless of what the student has done, he or she will always get the blue tick. She's assuming that the result will be always truthy. That's not right. So then what?
Should be in parentheses expected.
But it has to be this.
Getting close, Chuck. Chuck got the idea for sure. Why it didn't work?
It has to be the object, so expected is then the scenario object.
That's correct. The idea was right. However, don't forget, Chuck, that variable belongs to the scenario. To access the title, we had to write scenario.it. To access the conflicts, we did scenario.conflicts. So then, to access whether the result is positive or negative, we do scenario.expected. And that's it. So in theory, that should help a bit, not just business, even technical people, because you are breaking down your test into 3 steps. First of all, let's prepare the data. Given I got these details about the student, when I call this function, then I expect that function to tell me whether he or she is certified or not. Any questions? So once again, guys, your ability to succeed as a developer will highly depend on your ability to start doing this the sooner the better. Yeah? You cannot break into a company like Sky without these skills. So my suggestion is start playing. I will send you this snippet on Slack and then start playing. Even if you just write simple algorithms, you create a new file like I did, a student, create a new file with a couple of conditions and, write the test. First write the test, then check that the test failed, build the functionality associated to that test, the test passes, then write a new test, the test fails, write the functionality associated to that test. Yeah, you see, it's the same thing, same iteration all the time. First the test, then the function. First the test, then the function. Yeah? Keep working on that. Yes, no. So probably you cannot see that, but if I move that to the bottom, so as you may notice, I got 2 files. I got my JavaScript file called student, and then I got a test, which is the same file name, student, but with a .test suffix. So our testing framework understands that this is a test, so it has a mechanism to filter out what is a test and what is not a test. Yeah? So that happens magically under the hood. So that's the way you test JavaScript functions. How do you test React components? It's the same. So everything is literally the same. The only difference is the syntax changes a bit. But on the 18th of February, Rochelle will explain how the syntax is. Yep. Any questions?
What do you use on Codiri platform? Because it seems more faster.
That's a good question. So on the Codiri platform, we use nothing. One of the things we would love to do is to migrate to this type of testing. It's slower. Yes, it is.
Here it's slower, but Codiri platform is faster.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to explain. So in the Codiri platform is faster because there is no testing framework. I built a testing framework. Yeah, I built something very basic. It's faster because I'm not running any complex framework. However, that doesn't come for free. It's super fast, yes, but it has many limitations. Thanks to a professional testing framework like this one, we could do super cool things like testing asynchronous code. You remember promises, async await? At the TDD platform, we cannot test asynchronous code because that's a testing framework I created by myself. Yeah, and obviously I don't have the capability to write something as complex as that. That has been running for maybe a decade or even more, supported by many developers. Yeah, so yes, I mean that's a bit slow. I mean, in fairness, we discussed that already, Andrea, in the last session. If you repeat that on your machine, you will see that takes maybe 1 second, yeah? Not 5.3. That's because I'm streaming, I'm recording, I'm connected to the external screen, blah, blah, blah. So unit tests are very fast. You can run 3,000 tests in maybe 15 seconds or 20. Yeah? So they are very fast. All right, so because we got 10 minutes, let's talk about different types of testing. So far, we've been talking about unit testing. Unit testing means I got a function, I call the function, and I expect a result. But when talking about testing, we can display some sort of testing pyramid. I never found a way to do that correctly, but I'm trying to display a pyramid. So 1, 2, 3, yeah, something like that. And now that's never been a good idea. I don't know why I keep doing the same thing. So you know when you go on a diet and you see what should you eat and what shouldn't you eat and blah blah, you see that sort of food pyramid, like the milk and the bread and things like that. I mean, maybe I'm talking bullshit now, but food pyramid. You know that type of thingy? Yeah, where that essentially gives you an idea about if you want to have a healthy life, like Kirk Douglas that passed away tonight, right? 103 years. What should you eat? What shouldn't you eat? And the quantity. Yeah, this is obviously very high level, but I hope you agree with me that what that tells you is you shouldn't eat many crisps and Coke and things like that compared to vegetables, carrot, and green stuff. Yeah, that's the idea. So when talking about testing, we can do a testing pyramid as well. So there are multiple ways of testing. What we've done today will be at the bottom, more or less. So this is what we call unit testing. And some tooling that we use here, Mocha, Chai or Chai, Sign-on. Yeah? You may be thinking, what the hell? I've never heard about any of that. That doesn't matter. Yeah? So these are the technologies, some of the technologies, Mocha or Jasmine, they are equivalent. Some of the technologies running the test, the unit test. We'll see in a minute why this is at the bottom of your pyramid. But that's what we've done so far. Then Rochelle will present the next level, which is component testing. And essentially here you got jest and enzyme. So what's the difference? Unit testing is at the very bottom because these are the most fundamental tests you can write. Input output. You call a function, it returns true or false, 4 or 7. Yeah? Input output. Super quick. The reason why they are at the bottom is because they are faster. So that the width of the pyramid represents somehow the number of tests you should write. In other words, you should, generally speaking, have more unit tests than component tests. Why? Because the unit tests are faster to read. Unit tests run within milliseconds, super fast. Yeah? So that's why you should have more. On top of the component testing, you got things like functional testing. So functional testing means you got a real browser clicking on the screen and testing your components. So the most popular tool today for functional testing is Cypress.io. Yeah? You will fall in love of that tool. I strongly recommend you to play around with it. Companies may really appreciate these skills because historically speaking, testing JavaScript apps, or in other words, that tool opens a real browser and clicks, is like a robot. You know when you sign up in a web page and saying, enter the CAPTCHA to check you are not a robot? You know what I'm talking about? And you got a weird code and you need to type the code. Yeah? So these platforms try to prevent robots like Cypress from signing up and giving fake reviews to piece of Google Play, whatever. Yeah? If you're curious about CAPTCHAs and stuff like that, in 2015, I was one of the speakers at the Google conference, and I built a CAPTCHA based on Mario Bros. So to prove you were a human, you had to complete the first level of Mario Bros. In a web app. Yeah? It's on YouTube, you can find it. So yeah, anyway, functional testing. We also got something called, on top of that, integration or end-to-end testing, again with Cypress. What's the difference between integration or end-to-end versus functional? When talking about functional testing, you get a React application, for instance, we just care about the UI. We just care about the UI. We click on the UI, but we don't care, for instance, about the database, the backend. So we fake our services, yeah, on functional. However, with integration, we really want to see if the integration front-end and backend works fine. So we attack a real backend. Yeah? And then on top of that, actually there is just something else. This is something new and super cool. Companies are desperate to do something like that. Pretty much no one knows that. Actually, I introduced that at HSBC in 2017, but beyond that, 90% of the companies have no idea that even exists. So that will give you a lot of power in a job interview if you talk about CSS or visual regression testing. And here, what you got is a tool called backstop.js. So, even though you may be thinking I'm talking Chinese, as part of the Codely platform, you've been playing with some of them. So unit testing, that's essentially JavaScript training, pretty much, yeah? Or Python. Yeah? Input, output, that's what we've done today. Component testing, that's React training. Why? Because here, by the first time, we simulate user interaction. We simulate clicking on a button and then what happened? We update the state, for instance. This doesn't run any real browser. It doesn't open Google Chrome and click. No. It happens in memory, in a virtual browser. But by the first time, we start simulating user behavior. When talking about functional testing, we open a real browser, and even though the backend is fake, we don't attack a real backend. We really open a new tab in the browser, and we really click on the buttons, we really navigate, we really add user and password, we really interact with the application. With integration testing, so the user experience is the same, we do the same tasks. However, here we test the backend as well because we are attacking the backend. Here we don't attack the backend. And finally, what the hell is that? That's the most powerful testing method. So that essentially what it does is you got your web app, it works, fantastic, it's in production, all good. You take a screenshot. A real screenshot, yeah? You take a picture of your app. Hey, this is my homepage. That's it. So every time you do commit and push, Backstop takes a new screenshot of your homepage. And then it compares the screenshot. Imagine that your background is white, yeah? Or black, I don't mind. You got a white background on your web app. And then by accident, you change the background color to pink, which is a disaster. But none of these steps will spot the problem, because maybe the only thing you've done is changing one line in CSS, background color pink. Yep. So even if you open a real browser, the browser is not going to tell you, oh, based on my color awareness, pink is about background color. That's not going to work like that. The automated browser will click on the button and everything will work fine. However, because in here, we will compare the original background, the original picture you took 2 months ago, white background, with the new picture, pink. It will compare pixel by pixel, and it will highlight, hey, your homepage has massively changed. So that will throw an error. Yeah? That's why this testing method, which is super new, is so cool, because by the first time ever, we can effectively test your CSS. That's the UI training. You know, the UI training is literally that. You get a picture, you build some code, HTML and CSS, and then we compare the picture. If it matches the reference one, okay. If it doesn't match the reference picture, we vomit an error. Super powerful. Why this is on top of the pyramid? Because this is very high level. So at the bottom is very low level. We deal with the algorithms, objects, arrays, strings. Here, I mean, it doesn't even care if it's a React or JavaScript or Angular application. It just tests the CSS, yeah? It's very high level.
So we can't do CSS testing in any other kind of testing, right?
Not effectively.
Okay.
No. That's why this is so vital, because by the first time we can effectively test your CSS. I talk about changing the background color, but what happens if you got a layout with 3 columns and then you break it into 2 columns? You know, CSS testing will definitely spot that problem. So why this is on top of the pyramid? Because running CSS tests takes a lot of time. Yeah? It's more expensive. It needs to calculate a screenshot, check pixel by pixel. You know, it's harder to debug, harder to run. That's why they are on top of the pyramid. Also, you don't need that many tests. I mean, if you're checking if an email is valid or not, you may want to write 20 or 30 tests just to check that piece of code, that function. So eventually, you will have thousands of unit tests. However, when talking about visual CSS tests, probably you just want to take a screenshot of every view on your page. You may have 20 or 30 visual tests. Yeah? So at the end of the day, does that mean that your app will work perfectly if you do proper test coverage? Not necessarily. This is not rocket science. You may still have bugs. Yeah? The most powerful software products, they do all of that. Yeah? However, they introduce bugs from time to time. However, that essentially proves that your software is solid. Not necessarily perfect, but at least it's solid. Because if you do something wrong, and you are likely to do things wrong, even if you are really senior, you are likely to do things wrong, at least thanks to the sort of utilities, you will be able to spot them. You may have heard about the role QA, yeah, the tester. So there is a classic role of someone that doesn't do any coding. Someone that is waiting until you complete your task on Conflict. And once you complete the task on Conflict, here his or her responsibility is just to click around and make sure everything works as expected. Yeah? Have you heard the joke? Say again?
It's a cool job.
It's a cool job. Oh, I don't know if it's a cool job or not. But so QA breaks into a bar or something like that. Walks into a bar. That one. Have you heard that one? So that's the point. A QA person is someone that needs to, his main duty is to break the app. The more he or she breaks the app, the better he or she gets paid. Because the thing is, if he finds a way to break the app, that means that, you know, we're talking about one person or 2 people. But for instance, Sky, they got 11 million customers. So if I'm building a functionality, of course you try to test the app. But eventually, you may test few use case scenarios. 11 million people, the combination of 11 million iterations, they for sure will be able to find something wrong in your app. Yeah? That's why these guys are so appreciated, because it happened to me many times. I built something, I tested a lot, unit test, everything, blah, blah, blah. I'm super happy, this is going to be solid like a rock. And then I got a message from QA, hey, your functionality is not working because if you click 7 times on the input, then you change the tab, and then you go back, you tab, you blah, blah, eventually it breaks. And like, what the hell? And then you repeat that scenario, and he or she is right. Yeah? You break the app, they break the app. So yeah, this is why this sort of profile is so valuable. However, even though historically speaking, the duty or the daily task for these guys was very manual, clicking around, ordering 999 beers, ordering -1 beers, playing with the boundaries, testing, stressing your app. Today, the role is changing. So today, rather than manually testing everything, the role is quickly mutating to a more automated testing role. Rather than manually testing everything, what they do is they create, especially all this type of tests. They create a test. Why? Because, yeah, fair enough. If I build a new login system, QA may spend 4 hours and will test it really well. But even if it works perfectly today, what happens if 3 months later, by accident, I break the login I built 3 months ago? QA is not going to retest every single feature because, we're humans. We don't have time to test everything every single time. However, if you attest, the test will do the dirty job for you. The test will test every single feature forever. Yeah? So that's why this is so appreciated. So to the point that eventually, even though historically speaking, devs and QA testers, they were completely different profiles, in many occasions, not even sharing space, not even sharing city, or not even sharing country or continent. Yeah? So devs working in London, QA testers working in Bangladesh or somewhere else, completely separated. Now the trend is the opposite. Because if you think about that, you as a developer are expected to test your app. So you essentially are becoming a tester. And on the other way around, the QA developers, they tend to do more and more coding because they are going down through the list. And once they start doing unit testing, that means they are developers because they need to deal with objects, arrays. Yeah? So that's why it's getting very trendy to find a position, something, I don't remember the exact term, something like QA in dev or dev in QA. It's essentially a way to say, hey, you're going to do everything. Yeah? And to me, it makes sense because if you build something, you should be responsible of testing it. Yeah?
So the last 2 things will be done by developer?
No. I don't want to say that where starts and ends your responsibility. That depends on the company. Some companies, you as a developer, do everything. In some companies, you do some bits. So for instance, at HSBC, I think we developers, we did this free, and then the QAs, they did, well, essentially this one, because that one is something I introduced. But yeah, so that was the main duty of QAs, to really check that that piece of functionality you did individually on the header doesn't break anything else into the app. Yeah? But once again, that depends on the company.
If we want to...
If they found any error, they fixed it or they...
No. QA never fix the errors. No. So their duty is to spot something is wrong, and then we'll report it to you. Yeah, they will report it to you. So before, you remember talking about forks, branches. So you deploy the app in a branch to a private server like now, and they test it there. No one has access to that server, so they test it. And if it's wrong, you won't be able to merge that piece of code into master. You will fix the code, you will fix that piece of code, you will send it to the cloud again, they will retest it, and once they are happy with that, then you will commit, so you will merge into master.
Since React is component based, if we are, for example, on the Codeflix application, if we want to write testing, do we have to do unit testing or component testing?
Well, it depends. If you create a JavaScript function in a new file like this one, you do unit testing. If you want to check the user interface of a React component, things like buttons. I have a button. When I click on the button, something happens. checking the state, checking the props, checking the HTML. You know, that's React training on the platform. That's React training. Yeah. So that's component-based training. And once again, on the 18th, Rochelle will explain a bit of the of how to work with it. Anything else? No? Cool. That was it. Thank you, guys.